You could make skyscrapers only when you had glass, concrete and metals. Before you could not. Now it is the same. You can invent forms and you can invent new even feelings in music. That's not only a formal problem, but that's also an expression, a new expression, only if you have really if you can work with this new material.
And here is a young composer tackling that challenge of new material and new expression. He's George Benjamin, born in 1960. At 19, he completed Ringed by the Flat Horizon, his first orchestral work, and it's already had nearly 50 performances. For the past 3 years, he's been working on Antara, commissioned to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Pompidou Centre. Now, solving technical problems is a normal part of the rehearsal process. Here, the ensemble Inter Contemporain face at once two basic problems. One cellist hasn't arrived, and the other has the wrong music.
Music always advances through technology. It's always been the case. You wouldn't be able to write for the piano like Chopin had or like Liszt had if the piano hadn't had a few extra octaves and a bit of extra strength and the pedals and so on.
This is the third full rehearsal of Antara, taking place in the Boulez Institute for Research into Music and Acoustics, known throughout the musical world simply as IRCAM. We've used this rehearsal as our main thread leading us to a complete performance. Set into this rehearsal are flashbacks. We visited Benjamin regularly during the later stages of the composition of Antara, and at each visit he would describe the music's origins, or its progress, or its problems. So in a way, film crew and composer together kept a journal of how this music was made.
When I look back, there are 1 or 2 days which are of exceptional importance to me. First one, when I was about 7 or 8, I was taken very reluctantly to see the film Fantasia. I didn't want to go at all, but by the time the film was over, I was just mad in love with music. From the age of 8 onwards, I was writing parts out, writing scores out, arrangements of things, all pieces I wrote. I can tell you the story of one of them, which I wrote when I was 9, which was a setting of The Bugle by Tennyson, which was a very ambitious affair. It involved every single player in the school, basically. It was a small school, so it involved about 40 people, and people had to be brought in from outside. And it was, to say the least, very badly prepared, indeed. And catastrophically badly prepared. And the music teacher's wife on the last day didn't want to conduct it, so I had to be brought on. And the choir didn't want to sing, so I had to sing for them, and I can't sing anyway. The English teacher was playing the piano part, and he was 2 beats only, either behind or in front throughout. And the offstage trumpeter forgot to play at the end, which is rather crucial to the bugle. Anyway, it was a catastrophe. But the Latin master came up to me afterwards at the end and said, "Interesting piece, Benjamin, very modern." And it was all in C major. The other day that was of massive importance to me was the day that I met Olivier Messiaen, when I was taken by my English teacher in Britain, Peter Gelborn, over to Paris to encounter this greatest of living musicians.
Ce que je peux déjà vous dire, c'est notre première rencontre. Georges Benjamin est venu chez moi pour la première fois il y a très longtemps, il y a combien de temps?
11 ans.
11 ans déjà. 11 ans, ça me paraît hier, enfin il y a 11 ans. Il était introduit par son professeur anglais, Peter Gellhorn, c'est bien ça?
C'est bien.
Alors, il faut un coup de chapeau en passant, hein, monsieur Peter Gellhorn. Je toujours trouvé extraordinaire qu'un professeur anglais dise tout d'un coup à un élève, eh bien moi j'ai fini, nous allons aller en France chez Messiaen. C'est un acte d'humilité absolument prodigieux, je trouve ça formidable. Bon, alors ils sont arrivés tous les deux chez moi, le professeur et l'élève, et Benjamin était tout jeune, il m'a apporté une œuvre, et je crois, il paraît qu'il avait peur.
Terrible.
Oui, et moi je suis pas méchant, alors tout de suite il a été rassuré, parce qu'il pensait que j'avais une grande barbe, je n'avais pas de barbe. Et même je me suis mis à côté de lui au piano, il m'a joué son œuvre et je lui faisais la basse à la main gauche, la troisième main. Et j'ai tout de suite compris qu'il était très musicien parce que dans ce qu'il écrivait, les harmonies étaient entendues, les timbres étaient entendus, il n'y avait aucune erreur, il entendait tout. J'ai pensé tout de suite qu'il était comme Mozart jeune entendait tout, Benjamin jeune était comme ça, il entendait tout. Et je crois qu'il a continué, c'est le plus grand compliment qu'on puisse lui faire, il entend tout, même des choses que moi maintenant je n'entends pas, des quarts de ton et des combinaisons extravagantes, et que évidemment on ne peut réussir qu'avec des instruments actuels et avec des synthétiseurs.
While studying with Messiaen, Benjamin went to have a look at the newly opened IRCAM. The experience was not exactly love at first sight.
I remember going to see a man called David Wessel, who was a terrific enthusiast, a wonderful personality. And I said, I was very suspicious because I loved all music, but I didn't like electronic music. And I was suspicious, I said, would you show me some of the sounds this building has so far produced? He said, well, come into the studio with all this sort of James Bond technology around, all these flashing lights and big computers. I went in and there was a screen and he started tapping on the screen. I said, no, that's not working. Tapping on the screen again. And then this went on for half an hour I reached. And I went, oh, I've got something. Beep! It came out. And then he pressed another button, it was like that, sort of a different timbre, but just one note. And so I thought, right, that's it. Not for me. Then my studies in Paris continued. And through Messiaen, I met a composer called Tristan Murail, a French composer who's about 40, whose music I fell for almost immediately, and who, because of that, became a very, very close friend of mine. And he, more than any other composer that I can think of, uses computers in a very creative and profound way. And at first, I didn't want to know about it. Like so many composers, they were prejudiced, you're scared of the unknown. But his music was so beautiful and seemed so spontaneous in some ways to me that I at least was open to being persuaded a little bit. And so I was invited to attend the educational course at IRCAM in the summer of '84, and that was in some ways a wonderful thing. I did these 6 weeks and worked very hard there. I didn't do particularly well at computer writing because I found it too slow, it didn't enthuse me at all. But there was one lovely memory I've got at that time. It was a very hot, beautiful summer, which unfortunately being in this hole in the ground, you missed. But whenever you came out after these very intensive periods of study, various composers from all around the world there, you come out and face the Pompidou Centre, glistening in the sunshine. There'd be this group of Peruvian panpipe players, busking in the square. Instrument that exists was dominating this huge 20th century building. It was a real juxtaposition of the very ancient and the most modern, and in a sense that became an analogy for what I wanted to do at IRCAM itself. And the idea of taking this purest and beautiful old sound and working on it with the most modern technology, putting it through these vast computers, that I found very stimulating as an idea. Also, the many things about panpipes. It's not only that it's very old, but they're found all around the world. There are various types of Eastern European panpipes. They're found in the Pacific. They're found above all in South America and the Andes. Also the fact that they're such simple, bare instruments, but they have such enormous physical power. They used to be used like trumpets from hilltops in jungles of Ecuador. People would send messages to each other via panpipes. These tiny little panpipes require a great amount of strength to blow them, but they make this vast, vast noise.
Every composer working at IRCAM is given a technician assistant, often a composer himself. Benjamin's first assistant, Thierry Lancino, brought in one of the panpipe players from outside the Pompidou Centre and recorded every possible note on his instruments.
He did this in a very ordered fashion. He would put him in front of a microphone and he'd say, well, what's this one? This is a G. Right, blow it. And then, would you blow that staccato? Like that. Would you blow it without an embouchure? So you get... would you flatter tongue? And so on and so forth. And you get all about 7 different types of playing it, loud, soft, staccato. And you'd go through all the 50 pipes, which he had, maybe more. The beauty of panpipes is in their attack. It's the tongue and the way the sound begins. As with all sounds, the most important thing is that they're beginning. You can often disguise a sound after it's begun, but you always know what it is when you hear its beginning.
A key feature of the music is the placing of synthetic against live sound, for example the recorded and altered panpipes against the normal concert flute. So Antara is a kind of fusion between an ancient folk music and the language of 20th century art music. But was all the complex technology really necessary? Why not just write a piece for live panpipes?
Panpipes are tuned, they can't be changed, and you can only hold about 10 of them at the same time, so you have 10 notes. I have at my disposition infinite number of notes, and not only the notes of the chromatic scale, I've got all the ones in between, microtones, and so I can do phenomenal things in the way of tuning that would not have been possible on any instrument before. I think music has to be live, it has to be performed, it has to have the tension, the drama, and all the risks that go with live performance. I mean, you have dreadful things, but you also have wonders that you could never get recaptured through a tape. And so I wanted to have live instruments with it.
C'est possible qu'avec c'est mal marqué dans la partition pour l'alto et la contrebasse. Je peux vraiment entendre pianissimo, presque rien, tout d'un coup, sur l'accent du ton. Ça veut dire un, presque que ça. Presque rien. Voilà, comme un chien. Exactement. Même plus courte. Voilà. Et dans le piano? Voilà, très bien, que ça. Voilà, c'est mieux. Ça, le dernier, c'était très bien. Et dans le piano, je peux entendre le piano comme ça?
The original idea for this encounter between live and electronic sound had been for a shorter and much simpler piece, combining 2 flutes with a computerized tape.
But since then, there's been a revelation which, thanks to the instrument at IRCAM 4X, which is a very sophisticated machine, it can be used to fire these panpipes, if you like that term, into synthesizers, into keyboards. And it enables me to program every single sound, every single thing I want, as long as there's enough space on the keyboard and in the computer to hold it, and to have it performed completely live. And so, apart from having to compose the piece now, there's the massive job of programming and creating this instrument. This is 7 months' work and 2.5 years thinking. I've reached page 38, which is about 10 minutes of, on the whole, very active, very energetic music. But I have the most appalling amount still to do.
George, how's the piece laid out for the orchestra?
As a background, 8 strings, the 8 solo strings of the ensemble Antara, for whom I'm writing the piece. They act as an accompaniment, for a conventional term. And sometimes they really are an accompaniment. There are several dances in the piece, in which they are meant to sound almost like some sort of extraordinary guitar or plucked instrument, to accompany 2 flutes, 2 ordinary flutes. And these 2 flutes, modern flutes, will talk and will approach and converse with the ordinary panpipes. And then beyond that, there's this world of magic, extraordinary panpipes. These endless octaves and endless virtuosity are done by the computer and used very sparingly. And a meeting point between that and the orchestral group will be a sort of rather fearful, terrifying group of instruments, which will be quite simply 2 massive trombones, like Egyptian trumpets or these vast Tibetan horns that you have, something rather unearthly. The trombones are one of the bridges between the real world, if you like, and the supernatural world, and the imaginary world. And against those, or in combination with those, a very, very limited percussion section. I think at the moment mainly of anvils, different sorts of anvils, like in Rheingold. But there will be a metallic side, 20th century modernistic side, aggressively so, in the electronic music as well. There will be a sort of conflict between these things. And there will be almost anvil-like sounding things as well, but in fact what they are the actual sounds of the Pompidou Centre itself. Very early one morning, my assistant and myself went out with a considerably large hammer and started battering these vast metal pipes that make the Pompidou Centre. Now, it sounds ridiculous, I suppose, but they actually, some of them make a remarkable sound. And then we analysed those through a computer, and we got the chords and the attacks and musical substance of those things. And there's one sound which is my favourite sound of all the things I've done at IRCAM, and which I presume going to save, I don't know if there's room for it, but I want to save for the very end of the piece, which is what is called in official terminology at IRCAM a hybrid. But what it in fact is a mixture of the sound of a panpipe and the sound of this metal pipe. You simply imagine blowing a panpipe into a metal pipe and making the metal pipe respond. And the result you get is like a panpipe coated with gauze of silver or gold. I don't want it to be a battering of special effects, absolutely not at all. And also it's very, very important that all the worlds are united in one flow. This piece I expect will last something between 20 and 30 minutes. And I know already at the moment pretty clearly what is going to happen from now on. Though there are still certain grey areas where I'm not so sure. Then there's the question of how to compose that thing. So often I'm incapable of realising what I want to do. Sometimes permanently I just can't realise an idea I have. And other times I just have to wait for it to come. The fact is I've got to get the score written by the next time I go to IRCAM, simply because I've got to realise this massive computerised synthesizer and have the parts written out and prepare the score and everything. And there won't be time for the premiere if it's not. So over the next 2.5 months I've got to work like a lunatic. Since the 1st of December, that's 3 weeks ago, it's been going very well. Well, not fast enough, but it's been going all right. I've been working very hard at it, and I've written 3 minutes of music, which now brings the total to about 13 minutes. At the end of the day, if I've written 2 or 3 bars that I like and I'm pleased with, I write them out tidily and finish score. I change some details later on, and if they're not good, I throw them away. But on the whole, I like to have the score completely done up to the time I've reached. I'm proud of it. I like to see it down on paper and finished. And it's a great incentive to carry on in the piece, to think, right, and get another good page written. But this, I mean, like yesterday, I wasted, all this work is wasted, but it's not very tidy indeed, I don't think. Right? And this is me when I'm sort of inspired, as it were, which is very, very rarely. There's no time to write notes and chords out, because this is a slow, difficult slog, but I write words out. I describe what I'm doing. And I remember this, I was writing so fast that I couldn't really write the words out properly.
What kind of words do you write? Read it to us.
No, I'd rather not. I compose when I can. And it often takes me till about 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon before I can actually get down to work in the day. I try to get some sort of routine, and when I'm able to compose and it's going well, then I definitely get into a routine. I go for a walk in the morning, do a lot of thinking, a very early lunch, get down to work as soon as I can. I have to lie around and lie down a lot to get my thoughts really concentrated so that I can hear my sounds in my head and to hear things very exactly. And often I'll stop work about 5 or 6 and start again, often again late at night. Let's say last night I was working till 1 in the morning. I like to work late at night when I can. When it comes to writing the notes themselves, each individual note, I refuse to write it unless I've heard it, because sound is such a complex medium to work in, and the memory, the way the ear retains sound, it's so complex because you only don't have notes next to each other, but you have a note here which relates to a note there, and back 3 pages, and the harmony works in great spans, not only chord next to chord, but chord 3 minutes working against chord 4 minutes later. And you need to, I think, and most composers do actually, I think, need to hear it. There's also the fact that I'm a pianist, and I love playing the piano, and I think through my fingers musically. I hear sounds through these.
Conventional Western European music is tuned in semitones and tones, so how does a composer hear and experiment with smaller intervals than the normal semitone on a piano keyboard? How does he find the strange harmonies that come from those microtones? A Japanese electronics firm provided an answer.
It's a means for me to hear microtones. There's never been anything like this before, really. That enables you to hear them so exactly. It's two electronic pianos made by Yamaha, which have the exact span of a normal piano and a touch of something approaching a normal piano, not the sound, unfortunately. And I've simply tuned this one down an eighth of a tone, and tuned this one up an eighth of a tone, and so the difference is a quarter of a tone. And so I have a 24-note scale in the octave. I'm going to demonstrate how difficult it is to play and to get something, to get the quarter tones out. I mean, how awkward it is, but also how I've been composing the piece, I suppose. I'll play the very, very beginning melody that starts the piece. It won't be good on this instrument. Firstly, the sound quality isn't right, but also it's got to be the panpipes that we're going to have when we get to IRCAM.
And here's that opening melody after its journey through the computer.
I can play some slightly more complex things to show you how the harmony works in quarter tones. I've just written a series of chords that have got involved in the structure of the piece. What I imagine to be the ending of the piece I'm writing at the moment, I can sort of see a light that I imagine it to be in. Oh, there are easy analogies which everybody has made. You know, darkness is low down, brightness is high up. A composer like my teacher, Messiaen, talks about immensely specific colours for certain chords and for certain sounds. I wouldn't say that, but for me, light is an environmental thing in a piece of music. All the little bits of texture, all the little harmony, melodic bits of motion, and the gestures, it all adds up and fuses into an overall sound that remains maybe in your inner ear after you've heard it. If you imagine the music clothed in a sort of light, in a sort of atmosphere, it takes the music outside itself, it takes it beyond the nitty-gritty of one note against itself and the other ones, and takes it into something perhaps larger, bigger than music. That can help and pull the notes out of the page and into sound. File 4B. I've taken my score and I've noted the exact pitches and their qualities and their timbre and everything, and I've made a list of them, of about 1,000 different pitches using the piece, which is 80 minutes long now, about 4/5 done. And now what I'm simply doing is programming each individual note into the synthesizer through this computer stuff.
No, just A.
A, and then
H colon.
file 4B. Point. It's funny. I try to get.
hit 11 and your own instrument?
Composing always had this work done, but much, much more of it, in fact. If you think what work goes on to make a bassoon in a bassoon factory, sticking the bits of wood together, melting all the bits of metal, the shape of the cone, the shape of the reed, can you imagine what goes into making every instrument? I'm just doing that for myself, which is a very exciting thing to be able to do. I'm not given an instrument saying, you make the best with this. I'm thinking of something, and then I'm creating the instrument to realise that thought. See, that should be lasting 3,200 milliseconds. But in 10 years' time, this instrument, and indeed what I'm doing now, will be very, very easy to do and very commonplace, like the things we did 10 years ago are ridiculously facile. And hopefully, if the music lives and the piece is good enough, then it'll be easy to transport. That's all right.
That's probably coming more from this 1.5 which you have here.
1.5 volume.
Yeah.
Shall I avoid those? Robert and Court are doing a tremendous job at the moment. We've got 2 months until we finish the piece. I'm away for a lot of that time, and they've been marvellous in as much as the last 2 months they've been working incredibly hard, getting things like glissando and sustaining pedal and crescendo and all sorts of little but absolutely vital, sensitive things to be added to the instrument. Was that not all right?
You might want to load the patch again.
I haven't composed a note here. The preparation of the instrument and my learning my métier and learning what's possible and just finding out things has been here, like it would be in the concert hall or in a rehearsal room with an orchestra. But my composing has been done in isolation with as more difficulty or as much as ever before. It's been in silence at home where I've been able to reflect and meditate as much as I've ever done on any piece.
The last time we met, if you can remember, was 4 days before Christmas on a frozen hillside in Oxfordshire, on the edge of Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
What's happened since then to the piece?
When I got stuck terribly, I wrote some bad music. And I tried to continue it, and it didn't continue beyond about 5 pages. And then I kept on thinking, no, it'll come to me, and it didn't. And 2 days went past, nothing happened. 2 days went past, nothing happened. 2 weeks went past. I then thought, well, actually, I listened to a tape. There's a recording just come out of my previous orchestral music, and I listened to the recording, and I was pleased with the performances and the recording quality. And then I thought about the moment that the 5 pages I just written, and I thought, my God, if I listened to that, I'd be ashamed. And so I began to cut back and find where I'd gone wrong, and I spent 2 days going back and trying to go from there, 2 days further, 2 days further, and after a week I threw 6.5 pages away and found the spot where I'd gone wrong. And that wasted 3.5 weeks' work. But since then it's been pouring out, and I'm on page 75 now, I've written 80 minutes of music, and I'm into the so-called last movement of the piece. Mind you, I've got very little time to write that. L'harmonie Axel, avec des accords qui sont de plus en plus lumineuses, mais qu'on n'a pas le temps vraiment de... Si nous avons fini à cette heure. La flûte ritardando, en tempo. La flûte de pan réentre. En haut. Popo. Toujours la même sorte d'écriture.
Et comment vous faites pour entendre tous ces accords en quart de temps? Vous n'avez pas un instrument?
Oui, j'ai un instrument chez moi. J'ai deux pianos électroniques superposés en quart de temps.
Ah.
Alors, il faut jouer comme ça, et c'est dur, difficile,
Oui.
mais il y a deux pédales. Alors, avec un peu de soin, un peu de temps, on peut les écouter. Bien sûr, j'écris pas quelque chose sans l'entendre, c'est impossible, impossible. Parce que sans les entendre, on va faire...
Dans vos deux claviers, il y en a un qui est accordé à un quart de temps plus haut que l'autre.
Voilà, voilà.
Tout simplement.
Tout
Et alors, vous
simplement.
jouez avec la même main sur deux claviers?
Non, malheureusement, ils sont trop larges, alors il faut jouer à deux mains.
Jouer à deux mains.
Alors, si vous avez des mêmes registres, c'est difficile, parce qu'il faut... Et maintenant, voilà, j'ai 8 jours pour le terminer.
Il y a combien de pages encore?
Il y a 91, je crois qu'il y aura encore une vingtaine peut-être, peut-être 15. Mais le fin sera vite, sereine, et chatoyant on dit?
Chatoyant, oui.
Avec des petites flûtes?
Des frémissements de lumière.
Oui.
Antara is played not simply by the musicians on stage, but also by a group of musician technicians placed out amongst the audience. They too are an integral part of the performance.
My role during the performance is quite simple. I load the program, which takes about 30 seconds, and then I load the first sounds that are used in the piece. It takes about another 30 seconds, and then hopefully I sit back and do absolutely nothing. If something does go wrong, I'm here with panic buttons. There are a number of panic buttons because there are 14 sections in the piece. The first section is loaded now. When that's played, after it's finished, Pierre Laurent, who plays the first keyboard, pushes a button to load the second section. And this redefines both keyboards entirely when he loads a section. Thus, there are 14 different sections, 14 different redefinitions of the keyboards. Some of these sections also load different sounds. So not only are all the keys redefined, but the sounds that are used are changed. So, for instance, if he does not load the second section when he's supposed to, I can do it here, quite simply. That's a panic button.
This is Didier Arditi, and in the performance, he and the other sound engineer, Alain, will be controlling which speakers the sound comes out of, the overall volume, adding a bit of sound for the climaxes, adding reverberation so that it sounds like it's in a church sometimes, or sounds dry. And together, they look after the sound coming out of the computer and coming from the keyboards as it comes through to the hall. They're the last stage of the sound, as it were.
I created the IRCAM because I was at the point where my music was expanding in a precise direction, and tried many times with technology, and technology was not ready for me, let's say, much more than I was not ready for technology, because all the technology which was used until maybe 10 years ago or something was rather primitive in comparison to the musical desires I could have for writing a score. And then I thought that if one does not investigate properly, then also, the progress I want to do in some fields will never be accomplished without this collaboration of people working in the same institution. And therefore, my music has changed, but has not changed because of the institute. But my music asked me to create this institute to go forward. Teaching is learning, and learning is teaching.
Oh, oui, oui, mais Mireille m'a dit il faut avancer maintenant. Ah.
Parce que les gens pensent encore.
You know, what I don't want, that's the house composers, because I don't want the circle to be closed. I want to offer the possibilities of IRCAM to all the composers, and especially young composers, because they have maybe less objections to the technology. They are directly more involved and immediately more involved. At the beginning, I had a department for computer, but it was a department. And finally, I saw the computer invading everything, because the people who were doing synthetic sounds were using the computer. People who were doing analysis of the language of music were using the computer. People in acoustics were using the computer. So everybody wanted computer. And also the transformation of the computer, because what was, big enough to fill a room now is very small, and it goes more and more into the direction of individual computers, individual tools related to a central station, very powerful, but very soon a composer will be able to work at home. So you regain the privacy, which is very necessary for a composer to concentrate and find his own ideas.
C'est continu? Alors tout le monde, vite, 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 come on! Come on, vite, 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 come on! Tout le monde! Oh. Très bien. Bravo. Oh. The computer didn't break down. That's an amazing thing. Vous a marché. Bravo, merci. Bravo. Très, très bien.
We fixed it.
I thought that could have been a disaster. Yeah, it's a very strange feeling after 2.5 years almost exclusive work on this piece and 6 years thinking about a project along these lines, to suddenly within 25 minutes have it rush past people's ears and gone, and no longer in my head and in other people's heads.
When I come tomorrow afternoon, we will change the acoustics of the hall.
In what way?
To dry.
Yes, I want it wet. I want it the pictures to sing into guitars.
Yes.
They're scared to change it too much. Yeah, I want it completely soaking.
Yeah. No, we must have a reverberation at least 2 seconds.
Yes, I really am very glad.
Tomorrow you will.